All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Atwater. This is our June 4th District Advisory Board meeting. Before we get started, just want to remind you we do Facebook Live these so that people at home can tune in. And I will remind you again, but we will not have a July meeting. So with that, I'd like to, have you all seen the agenda for today? DAB board members?
Yes.
All right, entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. You all reviewed the minutes for today?
Yes.
All right, I will entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We are at our public agenda piece. We have one scheduled item that has been removed. We were going to have a presentation from the Douglas Design District that will be rescheduled. Are there any other items that the public would like to discuss? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our staff reports. We'll start with fire.
The numerical orders, we just went through 1 and 2, and now we're on 3. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, how you doing?
Hello.
So,
Yeah, the mic is not working, as we all heard.
Right, that's
Just
fine.
project a little bit.
I can talk loud. My name is Lieutenant Ring. I work up here at Fire Station number 10. We're the fire station that responds around this district amongst others. We're also a hazmat station, so we do the hazardous materials response for the city of Wichita. I just brought some paperwork from our fire investigations unit that goes over what happened in this district. This is for the month of May. 677 total incidents happened in this district. 31 of them were fire alarms. Of those 31 fire alarms, 6 of them were actual working fires. Those those made up the most amount of damage as far as dollar loss, which came to just over $500,000, $556,000. I know a couple of them were in bigger homes, and one was in an apartment complex, so that adds up quickly as far as dollar loss. Some of them are still under investigation, and others have been solved. Some of them were accidental. We've made 65 service alarms for the month and 581 medical alarms, which is normally what we see. About 80% of our alarms are made up of medical alarms. I had a gentleman ask me earlier what the service alarms are, and that would be, they range up across the board from a pipe leaking water and they don't know what to do, so they call 911. We go out and help them shut their water off. Or maybe somebody's fallen out of their chair and just needs help up. Or they have a fire alarm that's beeping at them, and we'll go and help them fix it. Maybe put new batteries in it or point them in the right direction. So that's what service alarms are. Somebody wasn't really sure what that consisted of. Of the actual fire alarms in District 1, 3 of them were accidental. 2 of them were incendiary, so they were started. Somebody set something on fire to start that on purpose. I know one person was arrested at the scene, so they've already got that taken care of. One of them is still under investigation. That's kind of it as far as the numbers and the value. In the grand total in the entire city for the month, fire loss was just over $812,000. I'll go on real quick. I was going to talk about, since we're talking about fire loss, 4th of July is coming up. The city changed their ordinance on that a little bit. It's very similar to what it was last year, and I printed off a few flyers I'll leave with you. And so if anybody asks, and I believe this is on the fire department website as well, I'm pretty sure. The shooting dates are from June 27th through July 5th. The fireworks are allowed to be shot off between the hours of 10 in the morning till midnight. And violations will result in a $250 ticket. The rules for the fireworks are listed on this. It's no sparks higher than 6 feet and no fireworks which are labeled as emitting flaming balls. If you buy something in the city, from a tent in the city, it's fine. Somebody's inspected that and it meets all the rules. Where people get into trouble is if you go out to Butler County or someplace, buy that stuff, bring them back into the city, and shoot them off. Whoops. And that, I'm just gonna break this even worse, I think. That's where you run into any problems. And then I was also gonna tell you that it's gonna get hot, it's getting hotter. We have been fortunate that we've gotten some rain this year, so any of the fireworks stuff that we dealt with last year, hopefully we'll, not have to worry about that with the rainfall that we've had lately. It's gonna get hot, so take care of yourself, hydrate well, stay out, in the shade if you can during the day. And that's about all I have for you. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Did I talk loud enough?
I have a question. I'm sorry. Is there a special number that you call this year as far as the fire complaints?
That is a good question. I'm not sure. They did have that last year. I'll have to look into that for you because I'm not sure I can tell you the right way. They did. I would not be surprised to see them do that because the call volume goes up significantly and it floods down the rest of the 911 system. So I'll have to ask and get back with you on that.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm also sure that the news will be covering this stuff as it gets a little closer. I'm kind of early on that, but I know you're not going to have a meeting next month, so. And then I'll leave these with you. I just printed them off and give them out as you see fit.
Will you take one to Miss Julie up front and ask her to make 20?
Sure.
And she'll do one for everybody.
Okay. There's that one if you just want to look at it.
Thank you.
And then I'll bring it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Take care.
You too. All right, we will move on to fire, or police.
All yours.
We speak louder.
They're used to that.
All right, Officer Larry Carlson, Pro South, 21B, Old Town Arena area. So, unless somebody demands, I start throwing out stats at everybody. I think that's one of the most boring things to do. No offense when you do that start. I can give you stats all day long, and they can bend and twist, and they're going to go up and they're going to go down depending on what we're doing. But if there's something significant, I'll definitely talk about that. So the DAB 1 area that I have is east side of Washington, kind of going down. So it's just outside of the Old Town region. One of the things that we've been working on and dealing with in the DAB 1 district is graffiti. And it seems to come all the way down and continue down and across. And then I was driving at 143rd East in Kellogg the other day, and I see one of these graffiti tags, and you'll see it as like a Baz or a Crete or I'm trying to think what other one is. Creative or something's another one that we've seen on there, but we finally catch up with the BAZ guy. Whoever's tagging this BAZ, if you haven't seen it, just drive somewhere around Hydraulic and Douglas and just head south. You'll see it all over. We got him on video, so we don't know who he is yet, so it's kind of throwing. So what we do is we get this, we catch him on video, we send that out to other police officers, and then if somebody can identify him, a lot of times, 99 times out of 100, it's like, yeah, this is who this guy is, or pretty sure this is the guy who we think it is. Once we kind of try to figure out who we can identify him from there, we'll also share that information with the citizens, and then that way so they can be on the lookout for, like, if you see this guy with this skateboard and this backpack, just call, because those are like official calls because it's just a matter of time before we catch them, because they have been very quick and stealthy in how they work a lot of times. We got them on a video that actually occurred in the area of 4200 South Seneca. I think I drove down there to help with a call load situation. Went to the store and I'm like, oh my gosh, you got this guy on video, because he's been hitting up around 21, 31, 42, 43 beats, so this entire area is getting kind of tagged up. So we actually catch him on video is very exciting because it puts a face to a name, and usually behind that, we'll catch up. So excited about that. That just came about in the last couple days. The other thing I was going to talk about was, and it's kind of blipped out a little bit, something everybody can do and everybody could really get interested in. It's called communitycrimemap.com. It's communitycrimemap.com. It is based off the system that we utilize, this newer system that LexisNexis basically buys all this anytime that, let's put it this way, anytime you sign up on something and you agree to whatever the terms agree to just to get on to the next thing and the next app or whatever it may be, guess what? Your information is going to be populated into those things. So they have a lot of public information that is just dumped into this system. Well, this company not only has the public information that any one of us could just go find, they buy it from other companies, whether it's Pizza Hut or Domino's or Subway or anybody. They get that information, they dump it into a system, and then we add, and the other thing is that we do with ours is we also add in our crime statistics that get uploaded into that system. It's fairly still new and we're still playing with it, so there's a couple bugs in and out as far as us dealing with it, but I know eventually they're going to go back 15 years and dump our crime stats into that. That's the things that we'll utilize that will help, technology help us forecast per se, and I use that kind of generically. Forecast crimes that it's coming, or something that you can kind of be aware of. It'll try to do algorithms, psychomathematics to kind of tell you this is the probability. So communitycrimemap.com, you can get in there and you can see what kind of crimes have actually happened in your area. You can also see other cities that report as well. I think Wellington or Winfield, one of those two is down there. Andover is one of that does it. Butler County does not report. I don't think Sutter County is reporting yet. But for the most part, for the city of Wichita, you can get into this website, go to your area, and then you will find crime that has occurred around your specific area that you're looking for. A little tweak to that is that if it's domestic violence, it'll say the address is like 1648 South Lulu or something similar to that. It'll just say 16XX. It'll put the location pretty close to where it's actually going on at, so I don't know what the purpose of XX is on that. But on the flip side, on a sexual battery or sexual battery, something like that, it'll actually just kind of put a balloon or a little notation on the map around that area. And that is not saying it's actually at that specific thing, but like within that area. Very awesome for you to see firsthand what's going on in your neighborhood. So if you're like, I swear I heard shots the other night or something weird, you kind of get on there the next day and you're like, aha, or give it 2 days, sometimes depending on the case, so it'll put it from there. But that is something that's very awesome, but that's way the future too. So any questions?
Thanks, Jules.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He's not very nice. I'm Officer Stark. I'm up at 47 beat up north. I just recently became that position. I've been on 10 years, but I just came CP, so I'm new. So take it easy. Just kidding. I'm not going to throw stats at you. I will give you that you had 1,000 Part 1 and Part 2 offenses. We had one over the last month. The breakdown I'm not going to give you. What we are seeing up north is Larcena Autos became a huge hotspot in the last month. Last night, some of us CP guys came in late. We ran a special assignment. About an hour after we quit, about 3 in the morning, car alarms started going off. So either they were waiting for us or we just got the time right. But all I have to say about that is they're out there. What they're doing is they're just walking down the middle of the street, checking door handles. They'll check all the way down until they get one that opens, and then they'll just go in, get what they can, and leave. So make sure we're locking up our stuff and taking it in. Some people don't think they can get hit, but it's happening everywhere. But it spiked real recently down in the Riverside area and then east of that. So just keep an eye on your stuff, lock all your doors, stuff like that. Also, auto thefts are on the rise. I'm guessing it's similar to when it's cold out. People start their cars now to get the AC running. They don't think it'll happen to them. They leave the car keys for a few minutes. It only takes that long for them to go in. So make sure if we're going to start our cars, we're locking them back up before we go out. But rule of thumb, I wouldn't lock it. Just go down the windows, let it air out for a little bit, and then get in. So those are your two major hot spots, both dealing with cars. The Larcena Autos is the big one. I can't say it enough. You know who's supposed to be in your neighborhood. Somebody's walking down the middle of the street with a backpack on. Odds are they're probably not up to anything good. Call us. We'll come check it out. If they're supposed to be there, we'll leave it alone. But 9 out of 10 times you're our eyes, so we can't be there at all times. So we've been putting out to the citizens if they need to call us. They're still not calling us for whatever reason. They don't want to call us. Say Yes just kicked off. I was down there at Wichita Transit today as Sergeant Justice, my other job on the police department. They were getting their bus passes to all the kids. Actually, there was a great turnout. I'd say they probably had 300 kids come through.
Wow.
So I'd say that they're prepping for it. A lot of the parents came out with them. Usually it's just the kids, but parents came out with them. They helped a couple of them get on the bus, show how it's done. So that's going to be a great program. The bus passes, so you'll see the kids getting on and off the buses. That's not out of the ordinary now. Hopefully they'll use it to get to their meals and stuff like that. Make use of it, get to the pools, things like that. So it's going to be a good program. Another thing we just finished with is Camp Awareness. It was out of McConnell this year. It brings in a lot of the 3rd and 4th and 5th graders. A lot of them, Dab 1 were there. It was a great success. Sometimes you get the ones that are scared of us. Basically what Camp Awareness is it brings in the kids. For the first 2 days, first responders are in regular plain clothes, interacting with them, doing BB guns, stuff like that. The last day we change into our uniforms halfway through the day, bring in our police cars, let them see it. Then they see us as police officers, but we've already interacted with them enough that they have a bond with us, and they realize that we're just people too. And like I said, it was a big success. We got in McConnell this year, and it worked out well. So we'll continue that in the future. It'd be great. So other than that, that's all I've got. We've got a couple of neighborhood cleanups coming up on Malaire and Matlock on 47B, but those are to me. So any questions?
So you talked about you want us to call these suspicious people in.
Yes.
Where do we just say there's a suspicious character and this is what they're wearing?
Exactly. Dispatch will walk you through all the questions. They have about 37,000 questions they have to ask you before they give to us. But once they get through them all, yes. I mean, most people walking down the street at 3 in the morning are not there for a purpose. They're there for a purpose, but it's not the right one. So yeah, if you see stuff like that, call us. Even if we come out and we don't find them, at least it's on record that we have it. If we don't have calls, we don't know what's happening.
Right.
So call us regardless. And then yeah, give them a description as detailed as you can be without getting yourself in trouble. Don't come out and say, hey, I'm looking at you. Get yourself in trouble. Do it as conspicuous as you can and call us. So you know who's supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And if they're supposed to be there, that's fine, but it's better safe than sorry in all cases. Alright? Anything else?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our library report.
Okay, Ann Ethan from the library. A couple of things. Over at the Maya Angelou branch, Thursday of this week, Computers for Beginners. Thursday, June 7th, 4 o'clock. There's still openings available. You can call the branch to register. This is for adults who need to know how to use a computer. The ones who, if you've never turned one on, never held a mouse, this is the class for you. This summer, we are continuing with our Candid Conversations book club that we started last summer. Friday, June 15th, 7 p.m. It's a special after-hours program. Library closes at 6. We'll reopen the doors at a little before 7 for a book discussion. The book for Friday, June 15th is Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Brian Stevenson, who's the founder of the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. And last but not least, the new Advanced Learning Library will be opening on Saturday, June the 16th.
Yay.
Yay! Now, you may have seen some pictures from about 51 years ago of a book brigade when they were moving the books from the old library to the brand new central library. They had a book brigade and they passed the books across the street. We will be doing a book brigade leading from the central library, going north side of Central Library, across Kennedy Plaza, south side of the Douglas Bridge, and north along the west side of McLean.
Wow.
We want people to come join us. This is going to be more of a ceremonial book brigade. We will be passing items. I think I'm going to go do it just for fun, and I don't even work at the new library. We need people. Show up about 8 o'clock, either at the old Central Library or the brand new Advanced Learning Library. Show up at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, June 16th. We'll do a book brigade, and then everyone will be able to go to the ribbon cutting at 10 a.m., which is when the library's gonna open. Questions?
You
Yes.
just need to show up? No
You
red.
just need to show up. That is all I have been told. I have been told it will be held rain or shine. And residents are invited to line up on that route between the Central Library and the Advanced Learning Library.
Will there be chocolate donuts?
I am not aware of chocolate donuts. I have heard a few things about what's gonna be going on at the grand opening, but nothing that's been released publicly. I believe the coffee shop will be open to serve coffee. They might not have their full menu out.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you. All right, we don't have a report from Park and Rec to submit this month, so we will move on to new business. Dave said he'll keep us here till 11:57 this time.
Good evening, all. Dave here out with the planning department. We've got two zoning cases before you tonight. The first one is CUP 2018-00019. This is a case that was heard by the planning commission at their last meeting. It's a request to modify or amend the restrictions on the property on what's called the 21st Plaza CUP, or Community Unit Plan. It's actually, I think most people know it as the Oxford Square project that we're on the northeast corner of 21st and Woodlawn. There's a typo in the staff report on your agenda because we identified, the substance of this request is the existing hookah lounge that's within the facility, Lava Hookah Lounge, is asking for permission to be able to get the license to be able to sell alcohol within the facility. That's all this amendment's doing, which is to amend the CUP to allow, by definition, what's called nightclub in the city. We did not get involved in the case that we did, but I'm sure if you paid attention at all last fall to the news media about the church out on Maple Street that was going through the process to get a nightclub in the city. By definition, the zoning code, if a facility has a license to provide sale of alcohol, is by definition a nightclub in the city. That's what the term is. In that instance, that was a church that was building a freestanding event facility, primarily for weddings and receptions tied to the church. And rather than rely upon caterers, they wanted to be able to have their own license. Well, that made that a church-owned nightclub in the city, which the interesting aspect of that story was the guy from the newspaper said he put that story out on UP or AP or whoever. It went national and international. He got more hits and more phone calls from all over the country, including people from Europe wanting to know what was going on in Wichita. So you never know how these things go. Anyway, all this amendment is doing is changing the restrictions on that parcel in that particular project. My error is I identified that the hookah lounge facility is in the building on the west side of that parcel. It's not. It's really kind of the center. West to east side of that parcel, there's right. They are actually on the east side of Spangles. I had thought originally they were on the west side. So this would go through the planning commission. I did have a couple of phone calls from neighbors questioning what was going on after we explained what was happening. We never heard any more. There was no one that spoke at the planning commission hearing on this at all. It was heard a couple of weeks ago. So you have any additional questions, anybody's got anything?
Any questions from the DAB?
Question. Would that, right now, the facility serves individuals who are 18 plus up. If, when they start, say it gets approved and they start serving alcohol, will that need to change to 21 and up?
They, under most of the state law governing, sale of alcohol, it's 21 and above. So they have, and you've got, ABC, which is the agency out of the state that really manages these facilities. All my cops have gone, but, usually they'll tell you that the ABC guys are the ones that really kind of control that pretty hard, and they let all the licensees know right up front, you better be checking, because we get wind that you were serving under 21, they'll jerk the license in a heartbeat, and they do. So, it'll be restricted pretty much to 21. Now, I have no clue of the rules and restrictions on the hookah lounge and what they can do. It's 21 on tobacco, but whether, hookah's a whole nother world. And I'm no expert in that at all, so, but they will be restricted, the same as anybody else that serves alcohol. So,
Is the applicant?
I don't think so, not tonight. No. They were at the planning commission meeting, but no, I don't see them here.
Will this affect the time that this business can be open?
No, it's the same restrictions and hours that they would have any other way, so. In fact, I don't think they want to stay on that late, so. Good question.
Do you know if security is currently present at the facility when it's operating? I mean, will they have security now that alcohol may potentially be served?
It won't change any way that I'm aware of, but there's, no, I'm not well aware that they run any particular security, whether they'll bring people in to provide additional, I'm not sure. The application and what they were indicating was that the operators believed that the opportunity to provide alcohol for their clients would enhance, maybe attract more people to come in. Now, that to me was kind of saying that we're having difficulty getting the number of folks just for the hookah lounge. And I'm not going to make any editorial comments on that at all. So, but no, there was no other plans. I mean, they're aware of everything that's happening in the neighborhood, in the area, to the extent that they're looking after their business every day that they need to do. So.
Any other questions from DAB? Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back. We'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve staff recommendation of changing the.
Okay.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you. Our second case is a PUD 2018-02-00002. This is a request from the Kansas Food Bank Warehouse to rezone the property that they own now, not only the existing facility, but they also have acquired 4 lots immediately to the south between Minnesota and Minneapolis, south of their existing facility. And they're asking for a rezone to a PUD. The present land that they bought, or the lots that they bought, were zone B, multifamily. Their intention is to expand that, the facility, expand the warehouse operation, provide more workroom, and we've got copies, and I think we will provide copies of the kind of layout of what they're proposing with respect to how the addition will sit in relationship to the existing building. There's also copies available back here that is available for anybody that wants to get a copy of that. The access to the facility will still come off of Douglas, but that's a right-in, right-out only, or right-in, right-out onto Douglas. And otherwise, the drive will come in off of Minneapolis. This will be heard by the Planning Commission this Thursday. The intention is to take the existing restrictions and requirements to buffer with screening walls or screening, fencing, landscaping, other site improvements, and move that to the south, the new south property line. And then all of the improvements will be further off the south property line, with the driveway being the kind of a buffer between the edge of the building, and there's parking off of that, which you can see on the site plan. They own the property all the way over to where the city right-of-way is along 135 on the east side. Most of the other restrictions that we're recommending are consistent with what we see in most similar types of requests of this nature, in that they are asking for a lot of uses that would otherwise be allowed in the current zoning that they have, which is the central business district zone, which is pretty broad. And we're actually, within the PUD, restricting that down significantly to where it's primarily for the warehouse use and some office uses and those kinds of things, but not opening it up to a lot of other things that could be a lot more egregious in the neighborhood. So with that, I'm not going to dwell on it too much. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I think we've got a lot of folks here that have issues they want to talk about. So,
Any questions from the DAB at this point?
In the report, forgive me, can you point me to the particular areas where we're limiting the different usages?
where is what now?
Can you point me in the report where we're limiting the usages within the PUD?
Well, at the, I don't think, in what you got printed out, that it got listed out, and I did not bring those with me, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, I did not. We can get them to you, I'll be happy to
Here's
get.
it.
Did you got it? This is the staff report.
Point out the areas that we're actually reducing the usages within the PUD. I mean, it's
Yeah, within the staff report, what we're recommending is that the uses would be what would otherwise be allowed in the central business district, except, and I'm going to read through these so everyone can hear what it is, since I did not bring extra copies of this. No auditoriums or stadiums, no correctional placement residence or limited or general, no recycling collection stations, public or private, no recycling processing center, no construction, sales, or service, no nightclubs in the city or entertainment establishments in the city, no correctional facilities, no animal care general, which is the large animals, no kennels, no RV campgrounds, no sexually oriented businesses, no outdoor recreation or entertainment activity, no taverns or drinking establishments, no vehicle repair, general, and no extractive uses like mining activity. So those are specifically listed in our recommendation going to the Planning Commission. Otherwise, the other things that can happen in the central business district would be allowed, which would be similar to most of the things up and down Douglas, or conversion into some type of residential structures, although it would, and I don't put up to anybody if they wanted to abandon that facility and then convert it into apartments of some kind, it could be done. Dwayne's here, and I'm sure he can tell you it can be done. But, that's not a restriction, but we did take the more, what we believe is the more egregious things out of the commercial zoning for that property in our recommendation. They also have to put up a wrought iron fence, maintain a 10-foot landscape buffer with landscaping above what would otherwise be required by the landscape ordinance. Also put up a 6-foot wooden privacy fence, screen a buffer, most of the other things for the residential.
Any other questions from Dab?
Actually, on item number 13 under the recommendation, we're actually talking about no signs. I understand that you wouldn't want to have signs that would be of a level that would interfere with or be a detriment to the neighborhood. However, it's also right here at 135. From a property perspective, I struggle with the idea that we would limit the property value by saying, hey, I don't want to allow signs anywhere within the PUD.
Well, they're allowed at the billboard, but right now, when the food bank facility was created back a number of years ago, one of the restrictions put on then was no billboards. So we're not changing a restriction that already is in existence. Now, why they did that, I don't know. I'm aware they're right on 135, but you're also, 135 is elevated, that's pretty high.
Exactly, and if you did put a sign that was up meant for them, it wouldn't actually address all those folks below. And by limiting that, you're taking away value from properties.
Well, but this is the language that they also offered, so we're not doing anything different. One, this is a restriction already on the books. Secondly, the applicant said we're willing to continue to let that happen. So, I'm not gonna argue with you because I agree.
All right, any other questions from the DAB? All right, we'll take it out to the public. Please approach the podium, give your name and address for the record.
My name is Rita Reese, and I live at 132 South Minneapolis, which is directly south of what they're proposing to do. And actually, my house is 93 years old. It's not on the historic, register or anything like that, but it is an old home. And since I moved in there in 2005, at that time there was no food bank. There was just an old, I believe, abandoned car lot or something. And then I think it was the next year, then all of a sudden the food bank went up. And my bad for not knowing to come to meetings or anything, but I was busy raising my 2 kids by myself. I wasn't paying attention to what was going on my block as far as what they were going to be building. But so they built that, and then since then, which I guess was 2006 when they built up something like that, 2006, 7, they acquired the property directly south to them, which was 2 houses away from me. I wake up to a Saturday morning and boom, boom, boom. 2 days, the house is torn down, the basement is torn out, the machines come and compact the soil, it's all filled in, and we knew nothing. No warning, no, here's a letter, hey, here's what we're gonna be doing in your neighborhood. Then just, I believe it was 2 years ago, 2 summers ago, they purchased the house right next to me. And again, I did not know, I happened to be going home at lunch, taking my dog out for lunch like I do, and I see a gentleman taking refrigerators out of the house and copper and whatever else type things. I said, hey, what's going on? He said, oh, the food bank's gonna be tearing down the house, they purchased it. And I said, oh, really, when is this gonna happen? Oh, tomorrow. And I have a dog at home, I had no warning, I had, nobody told me anything, and I had to take off work to make arrangements to be with my dog or take him out of the house because he was just a puppy. He would have went nuts with all that was going on. And my house shook, dust was everywhere, dust was all around my house, and now here we go again, construction number 4 gonna happen right next to me. These big semi-trucks are going to be pulling in right next to the north side of my house on a daily basis. And I know, I'm not a construction expert, but I do know there's heavy equipment that's gonna be used. I do know that there's heavy equipment like pile drivers, which I did contact Caw Valley, and I asked them some of the equipment that might be used: pile drivers, soil compactors, excavators, the big, trash bins that are gonna have to be pulled in there for things that they're gonna pull out and have to be hauling away. And all that causes rumbling, and all that causes soil shifting, and it can cause a lot of things that can be damaging to my home. So that is my concern. I'm not trying to stop what the food bank does as far as the goodness that they do, but who's gonna take care of me in my house? It's right next door. Are they gonna guarantee me that if anything happens to my house, they're gonna correct it? So that's my concern. Not to mention what you said, the property values, yes, and I did go up and speak with Mr. Walker, who's the CEO of the food bank. My neighbor who lives to the back of me, she lives on the Minnesota,
135.
yes, side. And we went up and spoke with Brian Walker about it. And, he gave us some answers, but other things he was very vague on. He couldn't answer questions for us, and said that he would get back with us or have someone get back with us. And, yeah, and I did get an email back to some of the questions that I asked, like, this is gonna supposedly gonna happen for 8 months, but it's supposed to start, if they get their funding, from what I understand, October 1st and go on all the way until May. That's the winter. Anything can happen during the winter that can delay that. So we're talking at least 8 months of construction, if not more. So that's my concern.
Next speaker.
I just want to voice my concern so I can take my 2-year-old on. So like Rita said, my name is Mark Wanisha Coleman. I live at 135 South Minnesota Street. When we purchased our home, the food bank was already there. And like she said, we're not trying to stop the good that they're doing, but as of right now, they have lights that they don't turn on. My main concern is security. I have a 2-year-old and my husband works nights, so 90% of the time, I'm at home alone in my house with a 2-year-old. As it is, I have people trying to camp back there. I am constantly calling the law because they're not policing their area. Half the time, they've been broken in several times, and if it wasn't for me calling the police, they would have never known. Sometimes I've even went over there and told them, hey, can you cut on the lights? They might cut them on for a day, and then they turn them off. They might come on till maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and then they cut them off. And it is very, very dark. I'm really concerned about that because I know that they're helping the poor, but some people are not just there to be helped. They're there to seek their next opportunity. And I don't want me and my home to be their next opportunity. I want to be able to, the things that me and my husband work hard for, to be able to keep. I'm worried about my property value going down. We made sure that we didn't buy a mobile home or anything like that because it loses property value. And I don't, I wanted to make sure that this little guy got a place to go. It's not often that I'm not even quite in my 40s yet that I bought my own home. So I want to really, make sure that I'm gonna be there for a while. I don't plan on moving. I want to make sure that it's a community. As it is, there's no more kids left on the block for my son to play with because they're coming along and they're tearing down the property and they're going to be, the road is I live on the dead end, and from what Brian told us, they're going to be moving the dead end closer down to my house, which means that there's going to be more cars turning where I live, and that concerns me when it comes to my son. So those are my concerns, and I don't know, we never did get any notice. You are talking. Never did get any notice that all this was going on. Brian, and we did try to be fair about things and go over there and talk to Brian, but he has yet to turn on the lights that he do have or get back with us. So those are my concerns.
Thank you.
You want to say what you want to say?
Good evening. I'm Leon Mader. I own property in the neighborhood hydraulic. We own the building the donut hole is in. We own, at this point, I think, 8 properties within 3 blocks of this corner. My partner Leanna Beat and I have purchased a property on McKnight, a home that had burnt, paid $20,000 for it, did full gut rehab, sold it as a virtually new home, trying to do some work in the neighborhood. My concerns when I saw this and heard about it, the houses have been bought, they've been purchased, they've been torn down, and now they're coming and asking for a zoning change after the land's been cleared. I assume that it's assumed that, oh, it'll happen. It can't be stopped. I walked the property the other day, and again, I feel bad standing here talking about the food bank. This is a good project. This is good work they do. If I could share some photographs of the neighborhood, they're going to have landscaping requirements. This is their current landscaping. The front page is the one that everyone in the public can see. The rest of the pictures are all the ones that only the neighbors can see. None of the lights work. None of the sprinkler systems work. Hasn't been mowed. Trees growing up. Trash. Fences broken down. Just abandoned property. So we're going to look for more landscaping buffer. This is what it looks like. The drive, the new drive that's being moved south, right next to Rita's house, that street is a 38-foot back-to-back right-of-way. Dave, do you have any idea what the curb width is, what curb to curb is? It's got to be 24, 25 feet, because it's 38-foot right-of-way.
I don't know.
So we're bringing traffic onto Minneapolis. There's 5 homes across the street on the west side of Minneapolis that are being impacted by this. They will look out their front door and they'll see what's probably a 16-foot concrete building. I think they could do better. The traffic next to Rita's house will be trying to get onto a street that has parking on the east side, parking on the west side. It's really single lane traffic when there's parking on both sides. I don't know how we're going to get traffic in and out of there, and that's going to impact 5 residences. Now we look to Minnesota, where we just heard about from the homeowner, the Hammerhead turnaround is going to be virtually in her front yard. She is the first property right at the Hammerhead, and the traffic flow there is going to seriously impact her home. We would like to help this neighborhood. We'd like to rebuild this neighborhood. This is a wonderful little patch. It is confined by Douglas and by 135, Hydraulic and Kellogg, and there's some wonderful property in there. This just, well, they've done it. They've already torn the houses down. There truly is nothing that can be done about those houses that were lost. There are houses that are savable. Leanna has 3 properties. Leanna Beach here, she'll be up in a minute. Has 3 properties on that block with the intent to rehab, and it's just being taken down. So I don't know what the answer is here, but some design thought. The idea that they never talked to the neighborhood, they never asked anyone, they never shared any information. People that did ask them, they said, "Oh, we're not going to tear any more houses down." Have not maintained the landscaping. I'm sure they're out to do good, but they don't seem to respect their neighbors. I'm not sure why that is. Not sure what. Oh, one last thing. I am on the board of directors of the Douglas Design District. We have not looked at this as a board. It came out last week. Our board meeting comes up soon, and we will be looking at it at that point. So my representation is strictly personal, and I will be asking the Douglas Design District Board to have some thoughts on this too. Anybody have any questions?
Actually, my question would actually be for staff. With this particular project that we've actually had right now, there is a standard radius. Can you talk to the fact that we actually have residents in the area that said that they weren't aware of it?
Well, the issue of the turnaround, the Hammerhead turnaround on Minnesota has been addressed by the city, and they've been, the requirement will be that they're gonna meet those standards. We will be addressing the issue on Minneapolis, based on the information he had. I'll make sure that we've got, public works officials there to address those issues. And within the pantheon of what's allowed under the zoning laws, the city could even has the ability, the planning commission does, to require a more detailed study with the traffic analysis to figure out whether or not it will actually work, and if it doesn't, to make improvements on Minneapolis to accommodate traffic if that becomes an issue. So those will be addressed. I don't have answers tonight.
My experience in these, I'm also a real estate developer. I've been before boards like this many times, and I told Commissioner Johnson earlier, sometimes I limped out of them. I find myself in a really different position to be on this side, representing the neighborhood. Traffic, you start taking parking off in Minneapolis, we've hurt the neighborhood. The Hammerhead, it's for local traffic, just for cars. That'll work just fine, but it's that dead end dark spot that they are not maintaining. If they're not gonna respect the neighborhood, we certainly don't want more of them. If they wanna respect the neighborhood, we'd be happy to have much more of them.
They get to go home at night. We live over there.
And I want to come back to kind of the direction of this, but I want to go back to the question that I intended to ask. And that's more about the notification that goes out to those in the radius for homeowners. Did we send out?
Yes, we sent out mailed notices, so.
No, sorry.
Well,
This time, not before they started.
And it was
tearing
like
down
I made a
homes.
phone call.
well, no, okay, let me start. The mailed notice went out a week ago for the meeting on 27th, or no, we're meeting Thursday, so it would have been
2 weeks ago.
a couple weeks ago. The applicants put the signs up before we mailed notices. So Rita actually called before we got the mailed notice. And the mailed notices were sent to the owners of record of property based on what the title company provided within the notification area, which was the 200-foot radius.
Vast majority, we have two homeowners here, which I think you're in the minority, aren't you? There's a lot of rental property there, which probably.
Yes, there is.
Leanna. I'll sit down and let somebody speak to those neighbors.
But speaking for the renters that are there, I have really good renter neighbors.
They're
And
not.
They've been there for a long time, and they just not coming because they're just renters. But they're concerned about the same things that I'm concerned about, because they have young kids. There's one couple that has 3 boys and that's, a dangerous area when your kids are playing. And the sign that says dead end is probably about that little square that they put, and it's getting pretty bad. The lighting under the bypass, they don't even maintain that anymore. They used to maintain that when we first moved in, but now the hardware's there, but they don't light it up. It's getting pretty scary over there. I feel like a prisoner in my home after dark.
And so if we go back to the prior gentleman that was actually talking, we've got a site plan that's actually here, you've got pictures. And you mentioned a particular area that wasn't actually maintained. Can you point to me where?
It's right behind the food bank.
And I think what he's talking
We
about is.
we have the south property line, which is about in here right now. And there's a wood fence, right, running from Minneapolis east along their south property line. But if it has a wood fence in it, that's on their south property line, running west to east on the south side of it. They have a 10-foot landscape easement. You can see the light poles there that are part of the landscape easement.
Yes, that's it. I did these this morning. So you can flip through those and you get a picture of the house, but that's Rita's house.
Yeah, my fence is
And then
completely
that's the
grown.
food bank, and then I get a panoramic.
They don't
keep
ask
that.
them to come, ask them to please come and look through those and trim
So,
that.
I need to take all my phone calls.
And then their property also goes against Canal Road, which is city property, and it's the same.
I'd like to
Same,
offer
the fence
this.
is broken.
Regardless of the vote that takes place as your community service rep, please take that brochure and call us, because when you have tall grass or weeds, lighting concerns, we report that to each department for the city, okay? And we like to take care of those, but that brochure is back there, and it has our name and email, Camila, and the information is on there.
And just from experience, she does actually get on it pretty quickly.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, or Councilman, if I may, in response to the issues about questions of concern of lack of maintenance and neglect, the same thing. Those are folks within the Metropolitan Area Building and Codes Construction Department that enforce those things. And there's not very many people there, so it's complaint driven. You have to call regularly and complain in order to get an inspection. And the complaint's got to be specific. It can't be generic about in my neighborhood type stuff. And if they're well, ma'am, let me finish. If there is a specific requirement, like there would be with this PUD, and the landowners, irrespective of who it is, are not holding up their requirements, they will be cited. And that does happen. So, but the inspectors have to know about that. It doesn't do you get to call us. We'll just refer you down to the guys that do that stuff. So, just like calling Camila, she's probably better at it than I am.
Okay, my name is Leanna Beat. I am a local realtor with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. I've lived in the neighborhood for 20 years. I live at 219 South Minneapolis. I also own 142 South Minneapolis, which is on the corner of English and Minneapolis. I own the two properties adjacent to that to the left. So it's my property, a two-car garage, and I just purchased that in March out of a foreclosure. The guy lived in that house for 5 years with no water, no trash, and no electricity. And so he lost the house over a certain amount of money. We offered him money to help him move, and he wouldn't take it. And so he lost the house. I went and bought it. I own so there is a alley behind the two-car garage. There are two houses, 1916 English, which I own, and 1918 English, which I own. And then there's another one, then there's two more, and then there's Artie's house. So there's really just a group of about 5 or 6 properties there. Some of them are in good repair, and some of them, the one between Rita and I, is not. And to answer Rita's question, I do call the city guy. His name is Ryan. I have his cell phone number, and he answers the phone. Hello, Leanne. So he knows I've called. I've called on couches being dumped there. I called on graffiti. I called on people living under the bridge last week. I've talked to the police, I think 5 times last week. So I am the neighborhood person who takes care of that. I mowed 4 yards on Saturday because my neighbors are in the hospital. I'm that person. But I'm also that person that when I turn the corner, I have a huge albatross of a building. And part of it is painted on the front. It's a nice orange color. But on the side of Minneapolis, it is a big cement fortress. When they took the first house, and I had shown that house to potential buyers, and a family bought it, and they sold it to the food bank, because the food bank told us that they didn't have enough room to turn around the semis, and they needed to turn. Okay, so then they took the house behind it, because they wanted to kind of square it off. Then somebody else offered them their house, and they took that one, and that's how they're taking Gail's house next door to hers, and so it'll be flat. The problem is, like she said, they're bringing the semis in, so now there's a car lot on the corner of Minneapolis and Douglas across the street from the warehouse on the west. And then there is an apartment complex. So when Leon spoke earlier, and I'd love to say he's wrong, he said there were 4 or 5 houses. They are apartments, they're duplexes. So, and they don't have any off-street parking. All of mine have off-street parking. None of these do. So if you have a 4-plex, there are 4 people living there, 5 people living there, 1 parking space or 2 in front of it. So they're parking in front of Rita's house, they're parking everywhere. So the food bank does an excellent job, and I have volunteered through Berkshire Hathaway. We have a volunteer day. We go down and help them do the backpack program. But guess what happens? We bring in 20 or 30 volunteers. Where do they park? And, yep. So what happens to me? I'm narrowed down. So what else Leon didn't mention is we have a nice church in our neighborhood that on Tuesday gives away food. So on Tuesday, you might as well not even try to come in our neighborhood because you cannot get in and out. I work at home, I sell houses, I work on my clients' schedules. I'm trying to back out of my driveway on a Tuesday to leave. I've got people getting food from a food bank and food bank people volunteering at a food bank within my neighborhood. And when I tell people I live by the food bank, immediately they come to the conclusion that I don't live in a very good neighborhood. I don't mind what the food bank does, and I sure don't mind the smaller vans going up and down the street. That's what I was originally told was going to be happening. And like everybody else, this was the first time that I was notified that anything was happening, and it's because I now own 3 houses. Out of the 6, I own 3.
So, I have a question. Of everyone who's spoken, I have not heard specifically what you are recommending on this item. So are you recommending?
If you remember, we were originally told they were just expanding the parking lot.
Right.
And if we have to have, as realtors, a 25-foot setback, why aren't we doing a 25-foot setback between her? Why are we not getting, if we have to do it, why aren't we getting a wall instead of a fence? And why aren't they maintaining what they've owned for 2 years? And now they're coming to ask us, hey, we'd like to build something. It's like, hey, we would have liked for you to mow or remove the couches that were dumped there that I had a call on. And I have also had a conversation with Brian Breiter about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. He told me the same thing. We're only going to take 1 or 2 houses. We're only going to expand the parking, which made sense to me because they have so many people come to volunteer. And he says, we're going to make it nice. We're going to build a wall. No, that's not what they're doing. They're building a lobby and an extension. It's not big enough for that. And they're all houses. And I don't want another brick albatross there.
So you want the 25-foot setback included in?
Right. But that's what you have to have from a curb to the front of the house in a new housing development. Why wouldn't you have it between 2 buildings?
Okay.
And the other issue is it does bounce against the canal route. So that area where the other woman was talking is kind of dark. And I invite you to drive down the street tonight at 9 or 10 o'clock and see how dark it is. I'm also on the City Council Advisory Committee for Transit. And when I went to my first transit committee, they had suggested that people just come down Douglas and then find a place to park on a side street and catch a trolley into like the River Festival. I also invited them to come park on my street at 9 or 10 o'clock at night and see how comfortable they felt with a big building that blocked everything and no light. So I walk up and down the street all the time, but everybody knows down the street. So.
Can you go back to what you said? I don't know anything about the terminology, easement and all that. I don't know what that means when you just said 25 feet or whatever. What does that mean? I mean, what are the rules and then what is an easement? Is that like, I don't know what
That's a
that
question, I
is.
believe, for Dave.
Well, just as your house has a setback limit on your north property line, from the property line to the edge of your house, what she's talking about is why can't we impose a 25-foot? If you read their plan and read the numbers, they're actually over 50 feet from the house, from that building to Reed's property.
Okay.
So they're not.
But
15
not on,
feet.
but not on Minneapolis. They
No,
have very
they are
little
the same.
setback on
They are the
Minneapolis.
same. Yeah.
Yeah,
And they're right
they're
on the
carrying,
sidewalk.
they're wanting to carry that setback back into the neighborhood. Same setback that fits at Douglas, they want to carry back into those
So
neighborhood
that
lots.
sits right on the
I
sidewalk.
Instead of stepping back as far as a house, so the setback on Minneapolis would be appropriate.
Yeah.
If I could answer what I would like to see, they purchased property that was zoned for residential usage.
Here, I'll switch.
They purchased property that was zoned for residential use. And I assume they knew it was zoned for residential use. My absolute perfect would be that they use it for residential. Rather than buying residential, tearing the houses down, just knowing they get away with it. That kind of bothers me.
Are the 4 lots, they still have residential value?
Yes.
it was zoned multifamily, not single family. So there could have been an apartment building built, and it could have lined up with the existing food bank building by law. So we're not changing anything in that regard.
So I'm just looking at this blueprint, and the wooden fence that they're proposing to go is going right on my property line. That's what I looked at. As a matter of fact, my fence, my little cattle fence, is maybe 6 to 12 inches over on their side, which I told them, no problem, I can move. I got the back one right, but the front one was off a little bit. So that wood fence is coming right on my property line. It's gonna be right on my property line. Then it looks like there's like, from what I blew up and looked a week ago, I think it's like 5 feet of landscaping. So there'll be that wooden fence, 5 feet of landscaping, then that big semi-driveway. That's not a lot of room between that driveway and my house. So, I mean, and when you ask, so what do we propose that they do? I don't really know. This is gonna sound harsh, but it's not my problem. I mean, it is my problem, but shouldn't they come up with that solution?
No, when I asked the question, I meant, so our recommendation tonight is either to approve this or deny it. So I'm asking, so you would like to see a denial?
Absolutely.
Denial. Would you like to see this approved or denied?
Well, I don't, well, is that like a permanent denial? I mean, I'm not trying to hurt the food bank from what they're doing, but again, what are they gonna do to protect my property?
So if it's denied, they would have an opportunity probably in a few months to reapply for a modified plan
If a case gets denied, they have to wait a year.
or a year.
Deny.
Okay. Mr. Thompson?
I guess my thought is, what are your references as far as, are your concerns, traffic, the lighting?
Mine is for the foundation and stability of my home.
Property value.
And it sounded like the lady who was here at the 2-year-old, her concern was mostly safety.
Security, yes.
Yeah.
Traffic, narrow that street, make that street even more difficult to use.
So is the lighting a city issue, or they need to put more lighting in the area, or is it the?
Well, they do have lighting on that building.
They just turn it off.
It comes on automatically at a certain time, and as the seasons change, it doesn't always come on when the sun goes down. So it could be like pitch black, because that building, as it is now, it cuts off the street light from Douglas. So we're left in total darkness.
Yeah.
And if they don't turn those lights on, it's just pitch black till they turn those lights on.
So it's like they have the ability for it to be well lit over there, just no one's turning the lights on. If they turned it on, it would be well lit?
It's pretty well lit in that, when they turn them on. I mean, it's decent lit. I can walk my dog in there. So,
A question that Dave, maybe you can answer, and I don't know if we have the information here. These residential lots were platted as residential lots with a setback off of Minneapolis. I can't read on my survey that at any point shows the existing setback. So the houses that are there now have a setback. And to me, it feels like they're farther back from the street than the food bank is. I feel like the food bank, when they did their first CUP, reduced the setback to the sidewalk. Do you have any ideas?
Well, when and it wasn't a CUP, in 2003, the property was zoned limited industrial.
Okay.
And they also were, a protective overlay was put on the property addressing what was being done with the facility at that time. The limited industrial zoning adjacent to the commercial zoning in the central business district zoning to the west across the street imposed virtually no setback.
Weren't there
On
two,
their
weren't there
part.
2 residential lots incorporated at some point in either 03
There
or 05?
may have been, but the planning was done back in the 1800s, and there were no setbacks established in the plan. So,
But it can set closer to the street than the existing houses.
The houses that I own were built in 1916 and 1900.
but most of
I
that
guess
area
just
was
meet with the
planted back
neighbor,
in the
talk to them
1800s.
instead of ignoring them.
I have a question for the residents. Let's, hypothetically, if they were taking care of their property and there were no security issues you guys have a lot of security issues and like maintenance issues that they're neglecting. But let's just say they actually got on top of their maintenance issues, would you be okay with them still?
But how many years have they had it?
Understood, but what I'm saying is, it doesn't sound like you're opposed to them being in the neighborhood, period. It sounds like you just would like them to take better care of their property.
At this point, since they've already torn the houses down, our opposition to them coming into the neighborhood's a little after the fact.
Understood.
And it's just kind of hard to get past that. And their thoughts for what are they gonna do in the future for the neighborhood if that's what they're have been doing today?
You realize that the land that they were built on, and it was an old car lot, it was Franklin Auto, because I lived there when there was nothing. Tammy's Soup Kitchen was a abandoned car wash, and Jimmy's Egg was a 7-Eleven that was defunct, Town and Country that was defunct. That's how long I've lived there.
Right, there's something
but
bullet
the,
across the street.
yeah, but the,
Pull your question back up.
you know, nobody came down the street and said, we're gonna build a huge monstrosity of a building and make it cement on your side, we're planting a few nice trees, but you're gonna have to go the first, like a football field worth of cement dark building around your corner. It's luminous, it's looming there, and it just doesn't fit into the neighborhood. I'm also part of the Douglas Design District, and it doesn't, the building doesn't fit. It's a big square warehouse, and I don't know why it had to be there, except for, I believe it was Carl Chusey who donated the land for it to be there.
You know, and then there's the issue of the trucks constantly gonna be going by.
Oh, yeah, the semis go up and down our
Leanne,
street.
please let her.
I'm sorry.
If I didn't live next door, I mean, that's, you know, my daughter sleeps in that bedroom right next door, and she's already, no noise, no light, you know, when she sleeps. And they start as early as 7 in the morning, and I'm not sure how late they run, but sometimes they're there on Saturdays and at 7 in the morning. And I'm just, again, you know, maybe all those other issues can be dealt with some way, but what do I do about the vibration on my house? That's my main concern. What's that gonna do to my house? And I don't know what the regulations are and the codes and all that, because again, I'm not a contractor, but I do know this because my house was built in 1925. I'm sure codes are different for what they would be today, and I know we've had a lot of earthquakes and tremors in this area, and I don't know that the code that they're going to be required now might make them have to dig deeper than mine are. My footings are on my house, and that's great for the stability and of their parking lot, but then that's gonna make my house take absorb all the vibrations from any kind of tremors or whatever, and the trucks and all that, and that's what I'm worried about.
So one of the other problems we're having right now is that when the semis leave, they're going south on Minneapolis to Waterman, and then taking Waterman and getting on Kellogg. So we have semi-traffic on residential streets.
And they did have to repair that corner at Waterman and English and Minneapolis a few after the food bank. I'm just assuming, we all assumed on the block it was due to those trucks coming on the street all the time.
I don't know too many other residential streets where you have semis coming up.
I don't really know the protocols when it comes to expressing concerns for a business within your neighborhood. I'm sure and maybe it's me. Okay. Because it sounds like if you express your concerns, I understand that you weren't okay with them being in the neighborhood, but I mean, like you said, they're there now. So these concerns sounds like you should be expressing them more verbally after today going forward, so that they can rectify the situation. Because I mean, they're there, so maybe they can make you more comfortable with them being there.
But we've talked to them.
Understood, but the vote for tonight is going to be if they're going to further expand their business. And so we're trying to get a better understanding on if you're like, yes, that's fine, if they'll better maintain their property, or no, enough is enough. Like what, I mean, we need a more clear understanding of what the neighbors.
I think we're going to make a lovely vegetable garden.
So no, you don't want it, period, even if they
I don't
agree.
see, you know, and it's a problem for me because I'm not trying to stop them from doing what they're
You know, I have a problem too, because how can I predict what that's going to do to my house? That's my problem. If I say, sure, go ahead, clean the yard, put the lights up, then everything's gonna be fine. I don't have any guarantees that it's gonna be fine with those semis going by my house on a daily basis and with 8 months of construction. Again, I live in an old home. I don't have the kind of income that if the walls crack or the foundation cracks, I can say, oh, well, let me just fix that. Yes.
Dave, does the site plan talk about where the semis can and can't go?
There's overall policies in the city code governing that stuff, and we will address that with the Public Works and have that information on Thursday at the planning commission. But they're generally, no, they're not supposed to be driving up and down residential streets.
Yeah, see, now, that's what he says.
But here's the thing.
No offense, but that's what Mr. Walker told me.
And that's-
At Cobb Valley Engineering.
Right.
I have it in writing, said they will be using that driveway on a daily basis during business hours only.
Let me finish. They're not supposed to be driving up and down residential streets anywhere. Now, does that mean it doesn't happen? No, I'm not telling you that at all. But I wish the cops were still here, because they would be much better able to answer the impact. You know, how do you stop people? You know, there's also a speed limit on the street.
You don't
If the cops catch somebody driving 80 miles an hour down that street, they're gonna write a ticket.
How do you stop them
As
from
I
doing
told
it?
you, I told Mr. Walker, we need to stop everybody.
You don't let them build.
One at a time, one at a time,
residential
one at a time.
neighborhood.
It's crazy.
And then Mr. Walker told me that, the CEO of Food Bank, and he said, well, we don't give them permission to park there. Sometimes they run late, which I understand, and it's after hours and they're closed, and they run late. The semi is coming from wherever they're coming. He said, and we don't give them permission to park there, but where are they gonna park? They park there, we don't give them permission. I said, okay, I understand that, but it's still your responsibility.
So here's my comment just for this. I still want to empower you all to dial 911 every time a semi comes down your street. The more you call 911, the more a traffic officer will be placed at that intersection. Please empower yourself to call 911. If you have any cameras on your homes, please empower yourself to do that.
I would say the other thing also is to always let Camila know when these things are going on, or send me an email, because I always send that to WPD. So when we have issues like that, and we've had an issue not with semis but in another area, I reached out to Captain Germany and I told him, this is an issue, can you send someone over there to watch? And they'll send a unit to watch for that. And every time someone breaks the law, which that would be breaking the law, they'll cite them. Over time, somebody at the food bank is going to get tired of these trucks getting cited, or a company's going to get tired of paying this fine. But if you don't reach out to Camila or WPD and let them know, because I know it's frustrating to you, if they don't know, then nothing happens. So now that we know, we'll make sure and get something over there. And I'll let WPD know to be over there watching as well.
And to add to our council member, 911 needs the call on record. 911 needs the call on record.
If I might add, that's part of what this is about today, with plans being in for approval. This plan is dumping their traffic in the middle of a residential street. If we start writing tickets to semis coming down that street, it's going to be the same place we are right now. Well, the houses are gone, why don't we build a warehouse on it? It'll be, well, the street's here, you approved it. You approved this driveway in the middle of the block for semis. So, and now you're not going to let us, so then I can see what's gonna happen. They're gonna take all parking off that street.
The decision's not here to be.
No, it isn't, but if this is where it starts. This is where the feedback starts, because I can see the food bank using their semis and all parking being removed on that street. So the semis can get through, because, well, I mean, you let us put a driveway there, why wouldn't we?
And then we run back into another issue with safety.
Let me add a comment for everybody, please understand. I'm not here speaking on behalf of the food bank, because I haven't really talked to them about this. But I've got to believe they're like about 95% of the other businesses that have material trucked into them. They do not control those trucks or those truck drivers. They will tell those guys where to go, but they do not police what happens with them. And if they do something wrong, it's not the food bank's responsibility to replace it. They can tell the guys. They can tell them forever. Now, As far as the issue about the drive entrance, that's why I said, we will have that information at the planning commission. I will, in my staff report to the planning commission Thursday, address specifically that issue that was raised tonight, and also have information from the traffic department of whether or not the existing street is adequate, whether it will require additional improvements, what impacts that would have on other operations and businesses in the area, what happens on, as Minneapolis goes further to the south, a whole series of other issues. And there is the authority under law to attach a requirement that if this change would trigger a need to make other improvements to accommodate what would happen as a result, it would be could very well be a requirement of the final action by the governing body to say, you will make certain improvements before it ever happens. If you'll recall our fun with some of the apartment complex recently about, no, it's not gonna happen until these things occur, so. And the city has a history, those things do happen, so you've got questions on either.
Joseph first.
So I just have two questions. So in the staff report that I have here, it says, under the general notes on the PUD plan, number 6 says all lighting should be shielded to reflect light away from adjacent residential areas. Would that be why the residents don't have feel that they have the necessary lighting?
The lights aren't.
No, it's not, I don't think it's a question of shielding. The intent of that standard, which is in the zoning code, is that you can't put a light up that shines at somebody's house.
Okay.
So they're shielded. Now, that doesn't mean the light should not be spread across to where it lights up the area. But what I'm hearing is their whole lights just come off.
Okay.
And so there's no light at all.
Follow.
So
if this were to be denied, is there another place where they can put the warehouse to expand the purpose of
It's kind of
this
too bad that
report?
they didn't buy the building across the street that used to be Vulture Cadillac, that was the Red Cross building that's been for sale.
not
Yeah,
our call,
but is
unfortunately.
there another plan as it stands right now if this were to be denied?
No, it's not our job to pursue those. We simply respond to what the applicants have brought in. Are there other locations, or there could very well be, don't know.
Thank
But
you.
they're asking, in terms of expanding on the existing property that they have, this is really about the only way. Shy of then saying, well, if we want to go to the east, we want to shut off Minneapolis from Douglas, which wouldn't go over very well either, so.
Thank you.
Aaron?
Going back to item number 6, is there any additional lighting provisions that we could actually require, particularly along Minneapolis? Or not Minneapolis, yes, along Minneapolis, particularly along the.
I think if lighting concerns are available, we could talk about, if you look at the site plan of what they're proposing, the area where we're talking about where the dead end comes in on Minnesota, all that's going to be parking lot. So there could be a requirement to have area lights in the parking lot that would light up that area, that would be on at all time, so that area would be lit and it wouldn't be dark. The same would hold true on that east side of the building. Those kind of things could be put in as a requirement to address perhaps those issues.
What about along Minneapolis on the west side of the building?
In terms of what, lights?
Yes.
Well, they're fairly close to the street. And I can't tell you off the top of my head if there's street lights up down through there. They could be required to maybe put some lights on the side of the wall to provide lighting at
They
nighttime.
do have lights on the side of the wall, they do not turn them on. And the street light that is there's an alley about right here, there's that car lot here, and there's an alley. I think the first street light's almost to her house, which would be the third house in the block.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a requirement that there be wall pocket lights that would light up the side, I'm sure.
Okay. The next question I've got then is back on the right in, right out. Right now, off of Douglas, I don't think that right in, right out now exists. The last time I was there, there's no wedge that actually changes your direction. Is that proposed new then, to go ahead and restrict traffic out of that location?
That's what the information provided Whether that there would be actual improvements on that, that's controlled by Public Works.
Because I would be tempted to say I would not want to go ahead and have a right-in, right-out there. I would want to try and drive more traffic towards Douglas, even though that's where they currently have their entrance, but that's the way they chose to do it. And I'd also be tempted to go ahead and have discussions too to see whether or not you could have a right-only exit from the south end of their property towards Douglas rather than going south.
That's possible. Again, we need to talk to Public Works about that.
Sure. A solid wall along the south, that's no difficulty.
It's not been laid on the table, but it is something that could be discussed.
Right. I'm ready for a motion unless anybody else has.
Mr. Thompson had a question.
No, I had my question asked.
Tom had a question.
So can additional building requirements be insisted upon to make the building more consistent with the neighborhood? I mean, you do go back there, this is like a huge, concrete wall.
There is the authority to address the aesthetic issues with any structure. That's in state law, and so yeah, if there's a desire to do something, it's a little difficult sometimes to make structure of this nature look like residential structures,
Sure.
but at the same time, it doesn't have to look like a prison.
Yeah.
So.
Aaron?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion.
You have an additional comment up there.
Mr. Hawk?
Yeah, Donald Hall, 1142 North Parkwood Lane. Discussing the lighting issue. I think as you're discussing it, you need to consider what the lighting that they have already. Is it supposed to be photosensitive? Or is it a switch to turn it on? Or is it a timer that hasn't been set? Mm-hmm. Now, if you're dealing with mostly volunteer staff, I assume, in the place, who is setting it? Mm-hmm. It may be just simply the fact that they had power outage and it's coming on during the day and not at night. So explore a little bit further in as you discuss this of what the actual situation is.
Thank you, sir. Aaron?
I move that we actually approve the project with a number of conditions. One, to actually address lighting at the end of Minnesota at the Hammerhead, to go ahead and brighten that up, to add pocket lighting along the west side of the addition, to go ahead and help light Minneapolis. I'd like some way that staff ran the applicant actually to work out that lighting would actually be on during dark hours, however that needs to occur. I would like to remove the right-in, right-out off of Douglas. I think that's counterproductive, trying to limit traffic from that location. And I would like to add a right exit only onto Minneapolis to turn traffic towards Douglas.
I missed the second part of the right-in remove.
Right now, there's a recommendation to make the right-in, right-out off of Douglas, off of the primary thoroughfare. Like that removed, that's counterproductive.
Remove right-in, right-out.
Yep. And I'd like to add one that actually forces the traffic that would exit from the south end of the property and force it north towards Douglas, which is the primary thoroughfare.
You wrote all that down, right?
Cryptic note.
I can read back to you, and you guys can help me real quick before the second comes in. A motion to recommend that city council approve the request with conditions of addressing lighting to stay on during the evening around, I just put around the entire building. Remove right in, right out traffic and add in right exit only to turn traffic towards Douglas.
Yeah. So the removing of the right-in, right-out is what they have on the Douglas entrance. That's not helpful. So we're gonna remove it, the recommendation from the Douglas, and then on the Minnesota exit that's on the south end of the property,
and add in right exit only on
South
Minneapolis. Thank you guys, I gotta do it with just him, Minneapolis. Okay,
If we're adding restrictions, I would propose also adding the aesthetic, that, the building on the backside that faces the actual residence would.
So would that be?
As well as the
Absolutely, and I missed one
landscape.
too, recommending a masonry fence for along the south end rather than just the wood fence. That's a mess. I'm not sure if that addresses what you were actually suggesting, but regarding the Douglas Design District, my guess is that if that group actually talks to them and says, hey, the color that you did on the front, that'd be really good to go ahead and do on the rest of the building. That might be one way to address it. But actually, I don't know why you couldn't put that in this too.
so, to follow Robert's Rule of Orders, you're gonna have to read this.
What's that?
This would be the
You want to add to that?
So the aesthetics make it more in line with what the neighborhood looks like.
Huh?
Well, I mean, I don't.
Motion. If
Okay,
NHPC
so I'm gonna read this.
approves what we do, then
Motion made, to approve the request of conditions addressing lighting to stay on during the evening, remove right in, right out traffic on Douglas entrance, and add in right exit only on Minneapolis, turn traffic towards Douglas, and recommend masonry fence and color aesthetics to the back of the building. So that's,
Is there any way, like, to add a condition that would address the landscaping issue? I feel like that
No,
would.
that's a motion, we need a
So,
second.
yeah, we have to get a second and then we can discuss it. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Yes.
Anicia?
Is there a way we can add a condition that would address the landscaping issue? Because I feel like a lot of the concerns were that residents would be losing property value because they were not keeping up with their fencing, with their lawn. There was a lot of overgrown, going on to Miss Rita's yard as well when she's asked for that. So I wasn't sure, I don't know how that works and how we can address that, but.
As your community rep, I will tell you, they already have the basics in there, we just need to report it that they're not taking care of it.
They are taking care of what they've already done, they're not taking care of the lots that they bought. So there is a wood fence between,
So
on the
you
south
don't have
side
to
right
add
now,
that in.
between what they've
We just
owned
need to
for
report it.
15 years, and then the houses that they bought. Houses that they bought, that lot is not being mowed, that's where the stuff's being dumped.
Well, like what you just said. you're
Hold on,
correct.
so discussion is here at the DAB board members. DAB board members will reach out to you if they have a question, but all discussion is up here at the moment. So,
Okay, so I guess my question to Miss Rita is, did I have that correct? Like the,
You did have that correct, and there is overgrown weeds and trees in my fence that have already bent my fence and are growing into my fence. It's already happened.
I mean, just for discussion purposes, at least my thought was that if you actually put up the masonry fence, then you actually remove the potential for them not actually addressing it. And there are a lot of things you could do with that fence, and have ivy growing on it and that type of stuff that makes it better. You can always add, hey, flowers and trees and that type of stuff. So,
Tom?
I was gonna have him reread the motion.
A motion to recommend that the city council approve the request with conditions of addressing lighting to stay on during the evening, remove right in, right out traffic on Douglas entrance, and add in right exit only on Minnesota to turn traffic towards Douglas Street, and recommend a masonry fence and color aesthetics to the back of the building.
Can I correct that it's Minneapolis and not Minnesota Street?
I have Minneapolis typed out.
I just don't want there to be any confusion.
Thank you. I have Minneapolis typed.
So I'd like to amend that motion to add to have the south side of the building that's gonna be facing the neighbors, to have construction that's more consistent with the neighborhood.
Construction or aesthetics?
Well-
changing aesthetics?
I don't know.
I wouldn't leave it vague like that.
Yeah.
So you wanna change the word aesthetics?
Well, I mean, just putting color on the wall, I don't think it's gonna fix, the issue. So I mean, just building materials that are consistent with the neighborhood.
That'd be a weird building, actually. I mean, because just houses of that era are gonna have, the siding that's 3 inches tall. And if you think about putting that on the back of,
Not
Well, and
necessarily.
then what you're saying, though, remember that the council's gonna get this and MAPD's gonna get it too. So we're just the first part of the conversation.
And you've also got the design,
So just-
Douglas Design Group's gonna chime in. And there's any number of ways that you can architecturally put materials on that. Is it gonna look like a house?
No, you don't, yeah.
I
Will it blend
think
better?
the intent is to get away from just a solid masonry concrete wall.
Correct.
Which opens up any number of things. They could put a glass wall in there that would be.
And with the discussion, it was already
So
said
there's a number of
earlier
ways.
that you guys like the color aesthetics on the front, and that's why the color aesthetics was added to that motion, because they have some orange on the front.
I'm the one that's gotta look at it. It's right next to my house. Orange doesn't really sound appealing to me on the back of the building.
Isn't that the color of the building? So is that the color that would have to go up regardless?
See, we're not even at a point to, it's actually tan, and with some red squares on it, it's not really orange.
Does it go through design council? That's not a city project, right? So it wouldn't go through design
I
council.
think
right?
it just has to remain consistent with what's already constructed, right?
So you want that
Yeah,
language?
I missed the question.
It would have to remain consistent with the current building,
Generally,
the new
that's,
construction.
well, I mean, that side of it right now apparently is pretty bland. And so, to me, if you're gonna address something like that, beyond the motion would be more to say that you're getting away from a colorless masonry or concrete wall. The standard that we put in community unit plans usually talks about architectural standards with acceptable accent colors, in that they have to be earth tone colors and things of that nature. So there's language like that that's out there.
Yeah, I don't know the language. I mean, I think you would know better than I would.
So you guys wanna add the earth tone colors? She said yes. Still saying yes. So the last sentence says, recommend a masonry fence and color aesthetics to the back of the building. What's your suggestion for amending that?
Color aesthetics that match what already exists, or?
With the existing building?
Yeah,
Would you say
that are in cohesion with.
the northern part of the building? Because the part that.
Yes.
Okay.
The north part has the color, the south part does not.
Yeah, the west part is not.
So, I have a question on, if you guys come to an agreement on, or we come to an agreement on how things should look, when it comes to aesthetics, and it gets to the next, where does it go from here? I guess you say it's gonna go before design council, autos, if they decide to change it, is it as simple as amending what was presented to them, or is it going to get kicked back here for any certain reason?
The only way it comes back here is if I can convince other council members to send it back to MAPC and DAB. But legally, it only has to go back to MAPC if we send it back.
And it hasn't been to MAPC yet, let's just go there, we are the first, and on Thursday, some of these residents will be going, so they'll get to even explain what we're suggesting Thursday.
I was under the impression that we had the motion and a second on the original motion. I was under the impression that we needed to vote on that and then make all the necessary amendments after that, due to the fact that it was already motion and second.
You're still in discussion.
I'll accept the friendly then,
We were just in discussion on it. And I don't believe Tom formally made the amendment.
I just don't know how I don't know how I can word it to,
So would we like to vote on this as is and then take another motion?
So,
My personal, I just prefer to try and get the aesthetic discussion correct.
Okay.
First time around.
yes, please. So you have color aesthetics to the back of the building is what originally was said. How do you want to revise that?
Dave, would you be willing to use the language that you, say what you said again?
Welcome to my world trying to define beauty, guys. If I could offer perhaps a little wordsmithing thought out loud would be to say that you would talk to the idea that the building have consistent architectural standards compatible with the buildings and I can appreciate the concern about the residential neighborhood, but keep in mind, you're right on Douglas, you've got a whole mixture of types of buildings already up and down in the commercial area. But I think if the intent was more to say you want to see consistency on all four sides of the building.
with the neighborhood.
Rather than just a facade on one side.
That's correct.
Aaron and Brumley, Mays and Brumley. So recommend a masonry fence and consistent architectural standards to the entire building,
On all four sides of the building.
on all four sides of the building.
Would that help?
I think that's fantastic.
No.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
All in favor?
All right, so we have consensus on that. We will vote. All in favor of this motion, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. All right. Thank you. We are down to item number 9, updates, issues, and reports. We'll start with Aaron.
Sorry, this is taking all my calls.
Actually, I don't have a whole lot at this point in time. Dan Heflin wanted me to go ahead and announce the reason why he's not here is because he was trimming trees and apparently fell out of the tree trying to do so. Didn't break anything, but he sore all over.
Oh, man.
So you may be happy that the next meeting probably can't too. But other than that, I don't think I have anything.
Tell him he has to come in July just because. To now. Okay, Joseph.
Be sure to purchase your wristbands for Juneteenth celebration.
When is Juneteenth?
Celebration? I know the parade is June 23rd.
I'll talk about it. Tom?
I have nothing.
Anicia?
Taco Fest needs volunteers.
Taco Fest needs volunteers. When is Taco Fest?
I got a message to spread the word. So I am,
Saturday, June 23rd.
yes, I know volunteers, they have different shifts and like different locations for volunteers to be doing different jobs, and you get free entry, a free shirt, and free tacos.
Unlimited free tacos?
I just said free tacos, so.
More
There
than-
was an
more
S
than
at
one.
the end of tacos, so I think so.
I will show up. Mr. Thompson?
Nothing.
All right, so I have a few. Juneteenth celebration this year is June 16th to the 23rd. June 16th is the Natural Hair Expo at the Metroplex, and June 17th through the 23rd is all at McAdams. All of that information is online at wichita.edu/Juneteenth or facebook.com/JuneteenthICT. Wristbands are for sale. They're $5 for the celebration. The parade is June 23rd. This will be the second year that parade is back from Wichita State down to McAdams. Should be a great time. Love to have everybody come out. We'll have some awesome folks there, vendors and everything. It'll be a great time for our community and celebrating. Outside of that, those who care about the swimming pool in Northeast Wichita, we will be voting on that next week, June 12th, 9 a.m. down at City Hall. Love to have you there and hear from you about that. We have whittled that down to 2 locations, Edgemore and McAdams, and we'll see what happens next week.
I'm gonna
how did, we went from, I mean, just last year, essentially saying, hey, there's no money for that, and we only have money to do a couple splash parks. What happened? All of a sudden now we've got money, and that's fantastic, but where did we get it from?
So the community organized around saving the McAdams pool, showed up to council meetings for about 2.5 months and convinced the mayor and council members to commit $4 million towards a new pool somewhere in northeast Wichita. We went through a process of trying to figure out where, and we figured out pretty quickly that $4 million isn't a whole lot when it comes to building a pool. So if we went somewhere that didn't have existing infrastructure, we'd have a smaller pool, kind of like College Hill. So we wanted to get a real water park, and only 2 locations left were Edgemore and McAdams for that.
So just for memory bank, so about 2 months is what it takes. Okay. Note this up. Good luck.
2 months, always showing up, getting people to sit there, yeah. Camille?
I'd just like to ask and continue to have you to, like the Wichita District on Facebook page and take all the flyers in the back when it comes to youth activities.
Yes. Well, if that's all, I guess we will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, stand up. Enjoy the Riverfest this week.